Hola, amigas, and welcome to the Gold Hoops and God podcast. I'm Dr. Guerra, your host. This podcast is designed for millennial Latinas and is fueled by faith and culture. Ignite the fire within. Hello there, amigas, and thank you for tuning in to the Gold Hoops and God podcast. Welcome to the new listeners, and to my returning listeners, it's good to have you back. Hope that you're all having a wonderful week. In my last episode, I talked about botanicas and different aspects of curanderismo. Today, I was guided to talk about making personal goals and achieving important milestones. If you don't recognize today's title, the title of today's episode, it's from the movie Legally Blonde. So, Legally Blonde is one of my favorite movies. I think it's super cute. It came out in 2001. It is with Reese Witherspoon. I highly recommend it. I think you'll love it if you haven't already seen it. So, let me give a little bit of background on the film. So, Elle Woods, played by Reese Witherspoon, is your typical cute blonde sorority girl. And during her senior year in college, her longtime boyfriend, Warner, announces that he's moving to Boston. They live in Los Angeles to begin law school at Harvard Law. So Elle is very heartbroken because she was expecting a proposal. Warner and her had dated for a long time, and she was hoping that he would propose to her before leaving for law school. And once she's able to talk to him and find out what's really going on, Warner basically insults her and says that she's too dumb and too blonde to be his fiance because he's planning to run for office one day and she would not be a good look for him. So having a blonde bombshell kind of wife would not be a good look for him. So very rude, Warner, very rude. Anywho, so Elle decides to take matters into her own hands and she decides to apply for law school too. And she works really hard. She studies a ton. She has good grades. And she is the president of her sorority. So she is philanthropic. She's got a lot going on for her. And she was able to perform really well on the LSATs. She did have to sacrifice a lot. There's a couple cute scenes in the movie where, she's missing the frat parties. She's missing activities with her sorority sisters because she really has to study. And the cool thing is that her Delta Nu sorority sisters, they support her and her, adventure in trying to apply for law school. So she ends up getting accepted to Harvard Law. Fast forward, Warner sees Elle on campus at Harvard and says to her, "You got into Harvard Law?" And Elle looks at him right in the eye and says, "What? Like it's hard?" It's classic. It's such an iconic line from that movie. Anywho, that's where I got the title of today's episode from, one of my favorite films. I won't spoil the entire film for you. And fun fact, Kim Kardashian actually did a spoof of Elle's Harvard admissions video because she is also applying to law school, or she's in law school now. So it's pretty funny. It's on YouTube if you're interested. So going back to the film for a minute, I really love Elle's response to Warner because on this journey of life, we will encounter a lot of people who will doubt us, or a lot of people who will question our plans and put that seed of doubt in us. And so I think it's so important to really find ways to dig deep and pursue those dreams anyway. Pursue those desires of your heart. On today's episode, I want to talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation because, of course, when pursuing a big goal or a big dream, it does take some kind of motivation. There has to be motivation. So, what does that look like? What drives us as human beings? What keeps a person going when they have decided to embark on a difficult journey? So there was an article that I read recently on a website called Very Well Mind. They have psychologists and therapists and different folks talking about human psychology. And this article in particular was called Intrinsic Motivation versus Extrinsic Motivation. What's the difference? So I'm going to go over this article. Intrinsic motivation is when you engage in a behavior because you find it rewarding. You're performing an activity for its own sake rather than from the desire for some external reward, right? So it's not seeking validation, it's really purely for one's own enjoyment. So the behavior itself is its own reward. For example, I can give the example of people who really enjoy gardening. You know, people who enjoy gardening because they want to connect with Mother Earth, they love working with the land, they love working with plantitas and flowers and cultivating fruits and vegetables, things like that. And so that quite literally is a labor of love. It's somebody enjoying that work and enjoying the fruits of their labor, and not because anyone else is telling them to do it or not because they're seeking some kind of external validation. So, moving on to extrinsic motivation, this is when we're motivated to perform a behavior or engage in an activity because we want to earn a reward or because we're trying to avoid punishment. You'll engage in a behavior not because you necessarily enjoy it or because you find it satisfying, but simply because you expect to get something in return or you're trying to avoid something unpleasant. So this is more along the lines, if you imagine, as kids, when we have to clean our room and we do it begrudgingly and we know we have to do it because otherwise we're not allowed to go play outside, we're not allowed to go out with our friends, that kind of thing. It's more so to avoid punishment than it is for the simple joy of cleaning. So, to summarize, extrinsic motivation arises from the outside, whereas intrinsic motivation comes from within. I would say that ultimately doing things for yourself really is the key, especially if we're talking longevity, especially if you're embarking on a major project or a major goal. I do think there it needs to be some level of wanting it for yourself, right? That you want it because you're going after it for yourself. It might seem a little odd, but our lives are ultimately ours. Your life is not about other people. This is your journey. We are the main characters of our story. And so this actually reminds me of a Michael Jackson song called Man in the Mirror. You may remember it because it is about the person staring back in the mirror each morning. It's really not about anybody else at the end of the day. I love this song because the lyrics of Man in the Mirror, they're really profound. If you go back and listen to the song, he, in my mind, he still remains one of the most iconic singers of our generation. He has had such a huge impact on pop culture and pop music. Rest in power, Michael. So, looking at the refrain of the song, I'm not going to sing it. I'm not going to sing it right now. But fun fact, I did sing in choir in high school, so I can sing, but maybe not this moment. So the song lyrics go, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. It's so true. Change starts from within. Change starts with us. We cannot control what other people do. We cannot control what other people think. We can only take responsibility for ourselves and take responsibility for our journey. I see this song as a beautiful reminder that any type of significant change really starts from within. It's a conscious decision. And I do believe that we are able to do hard things, but it requires digging deep. These type of things don't come easy. It can be a very arduous process, but anything worth having takes time. And all of us probably know someone that we admire. We use that expression, she makes it look easy or he makes it look easy. There's folks who make it look easy, but if you have a conversation with them, they will share that a lot of times the process has taken a lot of dedication and a lot of perseverance. It does not happen overnight. And usually there's a whole team supporting that person too. So it can be friends or family members. Celebrities obviously have crews of people that do their makeup and outfits and PR and, all kinds of things, personal assistants. They have a whole team that makes the dream happen. And in my case, I have several women in my life that I really look up to. I look up to them and I'm in awe of them because I see how they're able to somehow juggle many hats. I call them the superwomen, that they have incredible careers, happy, healthy marriages, and very successful children. Granted, I'm not saying that everybody's life is peachy keen and it's like a Hallmark card. That would be a lie, right? However, in general, it seems like they have found ways to live a very happy, healthy existence. And that's beautiful. And in talking to them, it seems as though the key secret, which is not necessarily a secret, is that they are very intentional about self care. They're very intentional about listening to their own needs, about taking time for their health, meaning, going for walks, taking kickboxing, taking Zumba, whatever the case may be, right? Some kind of physical activity to take care of their physical health. They take care of their mental health, right? They make space for the self care. Why is this so important? Because as they juggle everything else, it's the only way that they're not getting lost in the midst of everyone else, right? The danger zone of putting everybody else first, it absolutely leads to resentment. It absolutely leads to burnout and frustration and all of these things that ultimately don't serve anybody. I think that for certain generations, a lot of women, so I'm a millennial, I think that a lot of the older generations, they were taught to sacrifice to a negative degree. It was almost like you're not a good mother unless you burn yourself out to the ground. And that's not right. That doesn't serve anyone. I think this new generation is much more attuned to these things and trying to make a concerted effort to pay attention to self care, which I think is good. So, again, in terms of these different mentors and women that I look up to, I remember a specific workshop a few years ago, and the topic was something along the lines of work life balance in the academy, because I'm a professor. And so a lot of the things that I'll refer to are, tangentially tied to academia or things of that sort. So it was a panel of scholars, women, professors, and people were asking, like, how do you do it, right? How do you do it? How do you juggle all these things? And one of the women's responses really stuck with me. And she said that this idea of work life balance is a myth because it gives the impression that you can have 50-50, right? That it's going to be all perfectly balanced, 50-50. You have work, you have life, and they're in perfect balance. She admitted that in her own journey, in her own life experience, the times in which she felt like she was killing the game at work, her career was doing super well, that's when she felt like a bad mother. Those are the times in which she felt like a terrible mother and a terrible wife because she was not spending as much time with her children and husband. So it's a struggle. And then on the flip side, the times in life in which she felt very connected and attentive to her children and partner, she felt like she was a bad employee and that she was behind on a bunch of projects. I think the point is if you allow other people to keep score, you're always going to feel behind, right? If we're using other people's measuring stick, we're always going to feel inadequate. We're always going to feel behind. And this actually goes back to what I discussed in my very first episode about being a late bloomer. I talked about like late according to who, whose calendar, whose timing. I think that each woman, you'll know what you need to do. It really made a lot of sense to me what these different scholars and career women shared. And I think that for women, especially for women of color, many of us beat ourselves up and we're made to feel bad about being ambitious. For example, if someone is running a company, someone is entrepreneurial, many women are made to feel bad for having career goals. Women who decide to focus on their home and focus on, raising children or that kind of thing, they're not working outside of the home, they also get backlash, right? They're also made to feel bad that, like, why aren't you working outside of the home? You're just like staying at home all day. That's not very hard, right? It's terrible. So, what we can see is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? It's like a lose lose situation. So, in other words, don't worry about what other people think. I'm going to say that again. Don't worry about what other people think. Do what you need to do. Do what you need to do for yourself. Do what you need to do to make your dreams come into reality. And honestly, I really do believe that an important part of this is to not give away your power. Don't let other people take your power away. Don't silence your voice. Every person has a strong voice, and sadly, many of us get silenced in different ways. Don't silence your voice. Don't give up on your dreams. I wanted to take a moment in terms of thinking about goals and dreams and accomplishments. Many of the big dreams and big goals that we have in life take a lot of work. They are difficult. There are a lot of obstacles and things that people have to overcome. I actually think that, completing a degree or earning a degree, it takes a lot of sacrifice, right? And again, like as a professor, that kind of academic world is, it's my daily life. So I think in those terms oftentimes. Most recently, actually this past weekend, my department had the graduation ceremony for the undergrads and for the graduate students, the PhDs. And I was so moved. So in the departmental graduation, we actually allow the students a moment to say something, right? So the students actually get to go up to the mic and thank their families. And it was so beautiful. I was so moved to hear these young people and some older students too. We definitely had students who had returned to college later in life, and I think that's beautiful. But listening to them share how, the sacrifices that had to be made, sacrifices that their husbands made, that their wives made, that their children made, the sacrifices of their parents. So a lot of these students are Latinx students. So the story of migration is a part of many of their stories. Some of them migrated as young children or migrated more recently, or their parents migrated from, Central America, Mexico, etc. That is also a journey, a very arduous, challenging journey, the journey of migration. And so it was so moving. There was definitely a lot of happy tears, to see the accomplishment of like, wow, you did it. I was so proud of them because a lot of them said, I'm so grateful to God, to my family, to everyone, but I got to thank me. And it's so true. It was definitely the spirit of if folks saw when Snoop Dogg received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, his acceptance speech was so classic. He said, I have a lot of people to thank, but I want to thank me. And it's true. The late night hours, the hard work, the rejection, the frustration, like that's what Snoop had to go through. That's what the students had to go through. Each one of us has our journey that we go through. And when you make it to the other side and you look back and you're like, wow, I did it. I made it. You have to pat yourself on the back because it's amazing. It's amazing. And so it really is beautiful to take that moment and reflect on those accomplishments. And as I get older, and especially, seeing the students who return to school later on in life, and they really emphasized it's never too late. I think that's so incredible. I think it's so amazing and so beautiful, that reminder that it's never too late. There was one person who was in their late 60s getting their bachelor's, and it was glorious. It was incredible, and everyone was just as proud, if not arguably even more proud of her, because she had her grandchildren there, her family was there. It can happen. It's never too late. And as I get older, I really am beginning to appreciate and truly understand this concept of divine timing. Things happen truly when they're supposed to happen. Maybe not according to our clocks, maybe not according to our calendar, but it happens when it's supposed to happen. And patience is a virtue. I am not the most patient woman in the world, and that by far has been one of, I think, the biggest lessons of my lifetime has been to learn patience. And it's come up in different ways. So I get it. Sometimes we want things when we want them. So, my dears, mujeres, as we wrap up our conversation on this week's episode, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And your homework for the week, or your soul work, as I like to call it, is to spend some time reflecting on the following question. And this can be, just taking some moments of reflection. This can be, for example, in the shower to think about these questions, or if you like to journal, take a couple minutes, 10, 15 minutes to journal. It can be done any which way you choose. But I invite you to think about these questions. So the questions are: what accomplishment are you most proud of? What accomplishment in life are you most proud of? And what was the path like to get there? What did it take to get there? What was that road like? What were the ups and downs? And the reason I want you to think about that is to serve as a testament to your own inner strength and your own determination. Because whatever it is, you did it. You made it happen. And you need to really reflect on that and feel proud of it and use it as fuel for the next. You can do hard things. So, with that being said, I want you to consider, what is your next big project? I firmly believe that we as human beings, that we are guided to evolve. I think it's important. I think that stagnation is really detrimental. Pursuing a personal growth and development is so important. So I encourage you to think about, what does the next version of you look like? What are the areas of your life that you'd like to work on? And I encourage you to take one small step towards making them happen, because you can make them happen. So let's see, if your next big project, for example, is like, I've always wanted to run a marathon. Okay. Find out when the next 5K is. Do a little research. There's an app called Couch to 5K. It's an app that will help train you from being a couch potato to running a 5K. If that is something you're interested in, as far as like you want to kind of become a runner, whatever it is. Let's say you want to take up painting, see if there's classes locally, maybe a community college, maybe online. They have guided classes. YouTube is fantastic. Or these different platforms online where you can pay for courses in a bundle and learn how to paint, whatever your next big project is. Or let's say you started a scrapbooking collection, you kind of like let it sit for a while. Pick it back up if that's something that's important to you. Take one small step towards making it happen. Remember, si se puede, mujeres, you can do this. So I am so glad you were here with me today listening. I'm very appreciative of my listeners. Please help me spread the word so we can grow. Please tune in next week. So we're already at episode 6. And I decided that for season 1, I'm going to do 10 episodes because there are 10 weeks in a quarter. Episode 6, which is our next episode, is called Let's Dance, Perichoresis and Divine Love. Join me as I discuss the Trinity as a divine dance. This will be a fun episode because I'm going to talk a little bit of theology, but I'm also going to talk about clubbing, like dance clubs. So get ready for that. Have a good one. Thank you, mujeres. Ciao. Thanks again for tuning in to the Gold Hoops and God podcast with Dr. Guerra. If you enjoyed my content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find me on Instagram at goldhoops_God. New episodes are available each Wednesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Ciao for now.